Some connections just can't be erased by time, undone by distance, or broken by silence. When love is real, it goes beyond logic and crosses every material boundary, revealing a bond that links souls on a level that's deep and invisible. In today's video, we're going to explore this mysterious link between two souls, how, even when they seem to be moving in totally opposite directions, they still end up dancing to the same inner rhythm. Have you ever had that feeling that, no matter what happens, someone is still alive inside you? That sense of an invisible presence, a kind of communion that goes beyond physical touch, might feel like an illusion, but what if it's not? What if it's the sign of a true love, rooted in the very core of your being? Get ready to go on a journey where Jung meets true love, and let's uncover what really happens when two souls recognize each other beneath the surface. If you believe that real bonds never break, drop a comment below saying, "I feel this true connection." So, let's get into it. In Carl Jung's analytical psychology, those encounters that feel like they touch the core of your soul, they're not just random. Jung believed they're archetypal experiences, moments that awaken unconscious parts of us and reveal hidden layers of our own psyche when two people connect in a way that survives time, distance, and even long silences. What's happening isn't just about affection or memory. There's a whole psychic dynamic at play, something bigger than the ego. Jung taught that we project onto others the parts of ourselves we haven't fully accepted or integrated. These hidden fragments show up as archetypes like the shadow, the anima, and the animus respectively, the denied parts of our personality, the feminine side in a man, and the masculine side in a woman. By recognizing these projections, we start to see the other person more clearly, more authentically, and more deeply. Meaningful relationships are like living mirrors. Through them, we're invited to confront ourselves, and they push us toward individuation, that journey toward wholeness. Along the way, we're challenged to integrate what's hidden in our unconscious and to move beyond the idealized images we have of ourselves and others. But some connections do more than just reveal who we are. They actually transform us. These are the ones that last because they point to something much bigger than our personal willpower or desires. They spring from the collective unconscious, that deep psychic layer we all share, filled with symbols and meanings that go beyond reason and logic. The entrance of these bonds isn't about physical closeness, it's about a fundamental affinity between two inner worlds that recognized each other, maybe even before they ever met. From a Jungian point of view, the most meaningful encounters in our lives are never just coincidences. When two people cross paths in a way that feels intense and transformative, there's something much deeper than conscious intention guiding things. This kind of meeting activates elements of the collective unconscious, a psychic realm that holds archetypes, those ancient, universal symbols that shape how we feel, relate, and search for meaning. One of the most powerful archetypes is the sacred pair, the union of opposites that symbolizes wholeness. When you feel an immediate, deep connection with someone, as if you've known them for ages, you might actually be experiencing this archetype in action. What you're recognizing isn't just their personality, but something that mirrors something essential inside yourself. This kind of recognition often feels like destiny, as if the bond was written before you even met. Jung called these meaningful coincidences synchronicities. These are events that can't be explained by regular cause and effect, but that carry deep, symbolic meaning. When two souls recognize each other in this way, it's not just random. It's a psychic activation point and invitation for both people to go deeper into their own journey of self-discovery. When you meet someone under this kind of archetypal atmosphere, the energy isn't just emotional, it's symbolic. Everything seems more intense. Time can feel like it's suspended. Words and gestures carry extra weight, and even the silences between you can feel full of meaning. The whole encounter becomes a kind of gateway that awakens, heals, challenges, and transforms both people. The relationship itself turns into a living symbol, something that's bigger than either individual, playing out a universal drama of seeking, meeting, and revealing. What makes these encounters matter isn't just the emotional impact, but what they trigger within us. The other person acts as a catalyst, bringing up memories, dreams, forgotten desires, and even old wounds that were lying dormant in our unconscious. It can be confusing, even painful. But it's exactly this process that gives the encounter its deeper significance. It opens up pathways for transformation. Experiencing this kind of archetypal recognition also means losing some sense of control. The rational mind tries to label and explain everything, but there's something about this bond that just can't be boxed in. It works on levels beyond our conscious awareness. In those deeper layers of the psyche, if we try to force this kind of relationship into conventional molds, we risk suffocating the very mystery that gives it life. That's why these relationships often don't follow the typical script. They might be intense but brief, or they might endure for years with periods of silence, or come and go in waves. Linear time doesn't determine their value. The depth of the experience is what counts. There may be long separations, emotional distance, or even a complete lack of communication, and yet, somehow, the bond remains alive in both people's inner worlds. Going through an archetypal encounter is both a gift and a challenge. It's not about completing anything, it's about understanding. When we open ourselves to these kinds of relationships, we're invited to go beyond our egos, to question our certainties, and to let go of our projections. It takes courage to let the other person show us not just what's beautiful in ourselves, but also the parts we've tried to avoid seeing. At its core, this kind of connection leads us toward wholeness. It's not about finding a missing half. It's about accessing a part of ourselves that can only be reached through the reflection of another. It's like the relationship is a symbolic mirror, one where we don't just see the other person, but our own soul, stripped of masks, recognized in its true essence, and challenged to grow. In the most intense and mysterious relationships, we often find ourselves swept up in emotions that seem to come out of nowhere, sudden waves of idealization, bursts of anger that feel out of proportion, instant enchantment, or a deep sense of familiarity with someone we've just met. According to Jung, these reactions aren't random. They're usually the result of projections, parts of ourselves that we don't recognize or accept. So we unconsciously place them onto someone else. Projection is one of the psyche's oldest tricks. Everything we reject about ourselves, whether it's negative emotions like anger or envy, or even positive traits like creativity and compassion, that we've buried, tends to show up outside of us, painted onto other people, in close relationships. Especially, these projections can be incredibly powerful. The person we're drawn to becomes a kind of living symbol, carrying meanings and qualities that often say more about us than about them. Jung's idea of the shadow is crucial here. The shadow isn't just a collection of negative traits. It also contains the talents, sensitivities, and gifts that we've pushed aside. When the shadow finds an outlet, it gets projected onto others, creating a mix of fascination and discomfort. That's why some people captivate us or push our buttons so intensely. They're reflecting something in our own psyche that we haven't fully come to terms with. In relationships that run on projection, we build up an idealized image of the other person, a character that fits our needs, desires, or fantasies. But as time passes and we get to know them, this image starts to crack. The real person emerges with all their complexities and flaws. And sometimes this brings disappointment or even conflict. But this moment of disillusionment is actually a turning point. When projection falls away, we finally have the chance to see the other person as they truly are, and to see ourselves more honestly, too. This process can be tough. Facing our own projections means confronting parts of ourselves we may have tried to avoid for years. But it's this very confrontation that sparks true transformation. When we peel away the layers of illusion, the relationship can become authentic, a space for real connection, not just a stage for our expectations. The bond shifts from being about what we wish or need to see, to becoming a place where both people can grow together in truth. Besides the shadow, Jung pointed out two other key archetypes that influence how we relate: the anima and the animus. The anima is the inner feminine in a man, and the animus is the inner masculine in a woman. These aren't just reflections of the opposite sex. They're symbolic figures representing qualities and energies within ourselves that we need to recognize and integrate to feel whole. If these archetypes go unrecognized, we often end up projecting them onto our romantic partners. That's why you might find yourself falling head over heels for someone who seems to embody all the traits you feel you lack. It can feel like you've found your missing piece. But what's really happening is that you're seeing your own inner energy, not yet owned, shining out from someone else. For men, the anima might show up as a pull toward women who are deeply intuitive, nurturing, or emotionally in tune. If these qualities haven't been developed within, a man might seek them out in a partner, not realizing that he's really being called to cultivate them inside himself. For women, the animus might manifest as an attraction to men who appear strong, confident, decisive qualities she may need to develop in her own psyche. Relying on a partner to complete us in this way can make for passionate, but ultimately, unstable relationships. No real person can carry the weight of an archetype forever. As life together goes on, the cracks start to show. The idealized image can't hold up to the reality of the other person's humanity, their flaws, limitations, and individuality. This is a crucial juncture. Either the relationship breaks under the strain, or both people seize the chance for a more conscious, honest connection. When that happens, the relationship becomes fertile ground for mutual growth. The dance of anima and animus isn't just something that plays out between partners. It's also an inner dynamic. It's the ongoing dialogue between logic and feeling, action and reflection, strength and vulnerability. If these qualities are out of balance, we can end up rigid, stuck in old patterns, or feeling empty inside. Integration of these opposites doesn't happen overnight. It takes courage to face the shadow, recognize projections, and really look within. Often, it's precisely those challenging relationships, the ones that shake us up, make us question ourselves, or push us to our limits, that bring the anima and animus into sharp focus. Those connections act as symbolic mirrors, revealing not only who the other person is, but what's pulsing in our own unconscious. As this inner work unfolds, what once felt like a sense of lack can transform into a new kind of strength. A man who integrates his anima becomes more sensitive, empathetic, and emotionally open. A woman who embraces her animus gains confidence, clarity, and the ability to take action. Both become more whole, which actually makes them capable of forming deeper, more authentic bonds, not based on fantasy or projection, but on conscious choice. In daily life, this integration looks like being able to trust your gut without ignoring your reason, to act decisively while staying compassionate, to connect with others without losing yourself. When anima and animus are in balance within us, we stop looking outside for what we think we lack, because we're developing it inside. And paradoxically, it's right at that point, when we're more complete in ourselves, that our relationships become healthier, freer, and more lasting. None of this takes away from the mystery of human encounters. If anything, it makes them feel even more magical. When we realize that the other person is a mirror, not a substitute for what lives inside us, we learn to love with more presence, awareness, and truth. Love stops being about escaping from our own incompleteness and becomes a real celebration, a meeting of two people, each walking their own path toward wholeness. In Jungian psychology, individuation is the process of becoming your true self by integrating both conscious and unconscious parts of the psyche. This isn't a lonely path, even though so much of the work is internal. More often than not, individuation is sparked, challenged, or accelerated by relationships that touch the deepest parts of who we are. And this is where the idea of permanence comes in, not as stubbornness, attachment, or dependence, but as the ongoing influence of a connection that goes beyond time and physical presence. Some bonds don't fade when a relationship ends, when people move away, or even as the years roll by. They stay alive within us because they belong not just to our conscious memories, but to our unconscious. They're tied to symbols, archetypes, and those inner movements that guide us toward transformation. These connections are more than just affection. They become landmarks in our inner landscape, turning points, deep revelations, mirrors for our own self-knowledge. The relationships that foster individuation aren't always easy, but they're always meaningful. They force us to face our shadows, rethink our patterns, and make room for forgotten or neglected parts of ourselves. Yes, this often comes with pain, conflict, and uncertainty. That's what makes the work so important. These are the kinds of encounters that last, not out of habit or convenience, but because they mean something profound. Permanence, in this deeper sense, doesn't mean a relationship will always look the same or stay unchanged. Instead, it recognizes that true connections evolve, sometimes transforming, sometimes ending in the outer world, but still leaving a mark on us that never really fades. Even if you no longer spend time together, the impact of that relationship becomes an inner reference point, a kind of psychic landmark you carry forward. Jung famously said that what is truly archetypal has its own force. It exists independently of our personal will. That's why certain bonds seem to keep pulsing in our inner world, shaping our dreams, our reflections, and even decisions we make long after the relationship itself has changed or ended. When someone awakens your soul, that experience can't be erased. It becomes part of who you are. You might never speak again, but on some level, a silent dialogue continues, where the other person occupies a sacred space in your imagination. This isn't about clinging to the past or fantasizing about a reunion. It's about honoring what was real and recognizing that this presence, whether active or quiet, was and maybe still is a point of contact with something greater, your own journey toward wholeness. Permanence, in this way, is about being faithful to the value of the experience itself, even if the relationship morphs into something else, becoming just a memory, a source of inspiration, or even a gentle silence. It remains meaningful because it was authentic and transformative. Emotional maturity is essential here. It means learning to value a connection not for how long it lasts, but for how deeply it touches and transforms us. Certain relationships also have a kind of transgenerational resonance. They awaken ancestral memories, help heal inherited wounds, or open us to something bigger than our individual lives. With these connections, it can feel as if your story is woven into a much larger tapestry, connecting you to the whole of humanity. That's why such bonds can feel alive even as their form changes. Individuation, at its heart, is about recognizing that while we can't find our missing pieces in another person, every meaningful encounter can act as a mirror, helping us grow. When two people both contribute to each other's growth, even if their paths diverge, the connection endures not as something to be held onto, but as something that has changed us so deeply it can never be undone. The insight, the self-knowledge, the new sense of self that arises, these are the invisible legacies of true relationship. Ultimately, the real kind of permanence isn't about attachment or possession. It's about meaning. What transforms us endures because it's been inscribed on the soul, not just on memory. These relationships don't need external proof or guarantees because their reality is internal, archetypal and symbolic. They are portals, sometimes to pain, sometimes to light, almost always to growth. Even in silence or absence, they remain, guiding us gently along the path of becoming whole. So, how can you recognize these deep, archetypal connections in your own life? There are a few signs that set them apart from ordinary attraction or compatibility. 1. Immediate recognition. You feel like you already know the person, as if you're reconnecting after a long time apart, not just meeting for the first time. 2. Synchronistic events. Meaningful coincidences seem to cluster around your meeting or relationship, as if the universe is conspiring to bring you together. 3. Dream activation. The person appears in your dreams, often in symbolic ways, carrying messages or insights that feel significant. 4. Emotional intensity. Your feelings, whether joy, discomfort, or longing, are much stronger than the actual time or experience together might suggest. 5. Growth catalyst. The relationship consistently encourages you to grow, to become more self-aware, even when that process is uncomfortable. 6. Symbolic. Perception. You see the person as representing something greater than themselves, like an archetype or symbol in your personal story. 7. Time distortion. When you're together, time seems to stand still or fly by in ways that feel magical or strange. If you recognize a connection like this, how do you approach it with Jungian awareness? Here are a few practical steps. 1. Journal about the relationship. Write down your dreams, emotional reactions, and any synchronicities related to this person. Over time, patterns and meanings may emerge. 2. Examine your projections. Ask yourself honestly, what qualities am I seeing in this person that might actually belong to me? 3. Honor the symbolic. recognize that the relationship likely has both literal and symbolic meaning. Both layers are valid and important. 4. Embrace the challenge. Accept that deep, archetypal connections often stir up emotional turbulence. This is a sign of transformation at work. 5. Practice active imagination. Try having an inner dialogue with your image of the person. This can help you distinguish reality from projection. 6. Seek balance. Work on developing within yourself the qualities you most admire or long for in the other. 7. Allow transformation. Be open to the relationship changing form while still respecting the essence of what it awakened in you. Some bonds truly do transcend time, space, and everyday explanation. They're the encounters that reveal our soul's hidden parts, awaken our consciousness, and mark our journey toward becoming who we really are. Through Jung's lens, we see these connections aren't just emotional, they're symbolic, archetypal, and profoundly transformative. In this video, we've explored how archetypes, projections, the shadow anima, and animus all shape the background of our most powerful relationships, and how, even after separation or change, certain experiences stay alive within us, feeding our journey of self-discovery. When we learn to see the symbolic meaning of these encounters, we stop searching for easy answers and start welcoming mystery as an essential part of life. True relationships don't complete us. They help integrate us, and in that integration, we find the only kind of permanence that matters. The invisible thread that connects souls isn't made of dependency or need, but of meaning and transformation. If you recognize this in your own life, you're already on the path to more authentic love and deeper growth. The sacred dance between souls doesn't end just because the music stops. If this journey has touched you, don't forget to subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it with someone who needs to hear this message. Thank you for joining me, and until next time, keep honoring the deep connections that shape your soul.